witnesses to history!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the week 2 episode of the walkthrough with me, Jamie Hoyle, and you see my very special guest this week here from the Believe in Panthers podcast, former Pro Bowl running back, Jonathan Stewart. Jonathan, thanks for jumping on tonight. I really appreciate you getting on after some confusion about the time.
Oh, no problem, man. I'm glad to be on this show. Great opening there. That was really good. I feel
Thank
like I
you.
wanna feel like I wanna go suit up.
You want to go run through a wall?
Yeah, a little bit.
um, So, this is just a preview show, like we talked about a little bit in the emails that we traded. So, the idea here is we are going to talk a little bit about the Panthers game, the Chargers Panthers game, and just kind of kick some questions back and forth about the teams.
hmm
And we will get started. So, what I wanted to do was get started by kind of talking a little bit about Bryce Young. I watched the first 3 quarters or so of the Panthers game from Sunday. And I'm curious, entering year 2 now, where do you think Young is improved? And where do you think he still has the most improvement to make?
Great question. I mean, it's just the first game of the season. Um, and no matter how bad we lost, I wouldn't, I think a lot of people right now that are just catching the tabloids and, the trendy video topics, the memes, and they're getting the vibe that, this all falls on Bryce Young's shoulders. Uh, and this loss does not emulate any of that. Watching the film, there's a lot of things that he's done well. I mean, his awareness of getting the ball out on timing. I think Dave Canellis, um, spoke about that throughout the offseason as far as things that he's working on with him. Uh, and so I noticed that first game, obviously they didn't have a lot of, meaningful reps with preseason and how all that went down. I think you're kind of starting to see that trend happen more and more often where, those meaningful reps during preseason are being taken away, for the livelihood of the players. You don't want to get these guys banged up and injured. And so you got to figure out, you know, how do I work in, you know, getting these guys better? And you can only get better by playing these games, to be honest. Uh, but there's some things that he can get better at. I think understanding that his timing and his and the the presence in the pocket, and just having a little bit more confidence in his blocking now. I think the offensive line did a great job for the most part, making sure that he had time to throw the ball. And I feel like a lot of times either he was feeling rushed when he wasn't necessarily rushed, and so that just comes with time. That just comes with time and presence, with the guys that are in front of him now with Corbett, and then you have the new additions with Lewis and Robert Hunt. Um, it just takes time, and unfortunately, you have a fan base, and you're living in this world of instant gratification where you want things now and you want things done correctly now. Especially for the Panther fan base, they've been experiencing, these woes for so long now. Once Rivera was fired, it's been kind of, let's figure this thing out, and we haven't been able to figure it out, and so patience is running dry. But I think all the things that we saw on Sunday are all fixable. Communication with the line of scrimmage, communication with the backs, finding where your help is. Um, all those things will be able to be worked out through coaching and just watching film.
So, you brought up a couple things that stood out to me watching the game, and it was um, poise and pocket presence.
hmm
It seemed like he was rushed a lot, like you said. Seemed like when he didn't need to, he was throwing off his back foot a lot,
hmm
falling away from offensive linemen. Um, and I noticed for a guy who's very athletic and can move, it seemed like he had a hard time throwing the ball on the move quite a bit. Balls were sailing. He was overthrowing guys in the middle of the field as he was fleeing the pocket, things like that. So I think those are areas where, hopefully for his sake and the Panthers' sake, he starts to improve and you start to see some of that growth, because that was what really stood out to me was in year 2 in a new offense. He just didn't seem comfortable and didn't seem to have a whole lot of faith in what was happening in front of him, either at the line of scrimmage or out with the guys running routes.
Yeah. I mean, it's with any organization, you have to have, a comfort level with the guys around you. I don't care what you're doing. You have a new guy, show up to the crew, you got to get to know him, right? You got to understand what his humor is like, right? Is he going to be offended if I say this? If he, well, like, what does he like to eat? Or if we go to Taco Bell, is he going to order? Is he going to be offended? Like, this is a lot of things that you got to take into consideration as far as this team and how they've been put together this offseason. There's a lot of new faces. And you talk about, their off-season training, their training camp. This is their first time that they had training camp here in Charlotte. Usually they have it in Spartanburg, South Carolina at Wofford College, where you're in a dorm and you have the the way that they grow together and find that cohesiveness, that glue, so to speak, as far as those guys that are on the bubble, right? Those guys on the bubble, a lot of the starters and a lot of the foundational pieces of this team, you know, find value in guys on the bubble, and they find value and coaching the coaching staff see value in guys that are on the bubble. I think of guys like Brenton Burson, who actually played receiver at Wofford College. This is a guy that did everything the right way and was an asset in the receiver room from 2014 till 2017. Not a lot of people might know it. A lot of people won't know who he is, but we, like a guy like myself, knows who he is because he was meaningful to that locker room, because he was a guy that was going to do things the right way and he was going to show up and work. And so you have that type of mindset, you have that type of workflow. People are going to follow that. People can trust that, and it can becomes contagious. And then the younger guys pick up those habits. And so with this new team, you're figuring out who those people are. And for the words that Dan Morgan, the GM, says, we're looking for those dogs. We're looking for alphas in different areas of this team, guys that men would want to follow. And so when I'm talking about those guys in the bubble, the guys that end up being some of the glue to a team, those are the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, those are all excellent points, and you're talking about the cohesiveness and the habits and things like that. And I think those are what the Chargers are benefiting from with Jim Harbaugh right now. Is guys know he's going to get the job done. They trust him to get the job done. If they come to him with a problem with scheme or with a particular play in training camp or whatever, it's okay, let's run it again, let's fix it, and they fix it right away. And I
Yeah.
think those are some areas that a young team like the Panthers kind of need and maybe are waiting for Dave Canales to grow into.
Yeah. What did you see? What was the main difference in this Charger team watching this game in comparison to last year with a healthy Herbert?
I would say the biggest difference is the mental and physical toughness. To me, this is a team that has always folded when things got tough. I hate to use the word quit about a professional athlete, but you look at the way the Raiders beat them in December last year, and it was pretty evident that most of the team, I thought, quit on Staley and Telesco in that game. And on Sunday, things got tough for the Chargers. The Raiders were shutting down their running game. They were harassing Herbert. They were making things the Chargers had a hard time moving the ball for the better part of 3 quarters. And then they got to the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden they start getting 5-6 yards a clip on the ground. They hit a couple passes. Their defense is suffocating the Raiders. And what you saw is the Raiders, I thought, folded when they picked that fight, and the Chargers kind of came together and in a lot of ways imposed their will on the Raiders late in that game. And that is not something that would have happened in the last, I don't know, 15 years with this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the major difference in the running game? Does J.K. Dobbins like the addition of him to this squad, does that just scream Jim Harbaugh like all over the place?
Yeah, I think the addition of him and Gus Edwards both scream Jim Harbaugh all over the place because the Chargers for a while have been kind of undersized at running back. And it seemed like for a long time they were trying to do what other teams were doing successfully. So when they brought
Hmm.
Staley in, it was we're going to run that outside zone scheme that the Rams run so well. We're going to run play action and bootleg off of it. Well, you know what? It didn't fit their offensive line. And they kept trying to do it over and over and over again, and it didn't work. And they were just running into a wall. Now they've
Hmm.
figured out what works. Now they're running gap, they're running power, they're going to run the ball
Yeah.
right downhill. And I think what you're going to see is Gus wear people down for the first two and a half quarters. And then you start to see JK break those long runs as guys get tired and winded and they maybe don't want to tackle as much anymore.
Yeah. I love that. I love the simplicity of that that game plan. I mean, that's what we talk about, the simple days when me and D'Angelo would basically, you know, basically take turns whooping up on teams, um, wearing guys down, and then what that does, it opens up play action, uh, and you hit the explosive plays in the passing game as well. So and you got the quarterback to do that for sure. And I mean, people
Yeah.
forget. I know Herbert's dealing with a foot issue, but he can run as well. So you start getting those boots, those waggles. That's a hard thing to stop when you're having a really good running game.
Yep. And then you start getting those 5, 6, 7 yard runs. Pretty soon it becomes 10, 15 yards, like you know real well. And you just start pounding people and wearing people down. And now you don't need as many explosive plays in the passing game. And it's easier to marry the two parts of the offense. So
Yeah.
it's something they've been striving for and have had a hard time doing until now.
Who's a receiver? Who's the go-to receiver now with all the mix up over the
That
offseason?
that's an excellent question. And I would say that still kind of remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Last week, it looked like it might be Lad McConkey.
Mm-hmm.
He was making some big plays big in terms of the timing and coming through with moving the chains or scoring a touchdown when they needed it. Not necessarily stretching the field, but big timely plays in the
Mm-hmm.
clutch. And it
Yeah.
seems like Herbert trusts him. So I kind of went in the season thinking it might be Palmer early in the year and McConkey would kind of grow into that role. But it seems like McConkey's kind of, at least last week, he started stepping into that role a little earlier than I expected.
Yeah. Well, how is the how is Khalil Mack? I know he's getting up there in age. Does he still have the juice? Is it
Oh, he
something that
still
we
has the
should?
juice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a sack and a half or 2 sacks last week. It seems like the juice shows up a lot more when they play the Raiders than when they play everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
There's always 2 or 3 sacks in there when they play the Raiders. But he's still got the power. He's still got the juice off the edge. The thing that impresses me is Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh have some guys on that defensive line who have had some rough years in the last few years. They've been hurt. They haven't been as productive. They're all buying in and they're all defending the run with a lot of vigor. They're
Mm-hmm.
really going after stopping the run and taking a lot of pride in that. You're seeing that out of Mack. You're seeing it out of Bosa. Ford in the middle is making a huge difference through one game, and it's a small sample size, but he looked really good on Sunday.
Yeah, and obviously that you think that's a product of Jim coming in and basically demanding the physical play that he once had here in the NFL with the 49ers.
Yeah, I think it's a product of Jim demanding physical play. I also think it's the guys buying into the defensive system. I think
Mm-hmm.
the last couple years there was early buy-in with Staley, but I don't think it lasted very long once things started going south. And now I think they know they've got somebody who knows what he's doing, and they're
Yeah.
buying in.
What are some things that you're wary of going into facing the Panthers? I know we come off of a bad loss, but obviously that can present itself as a trap game early on in a season. You don't really hear that term often, the trap game. But um, you know, what do you see as a potential issue that may arise for the Chargers?
I think there are a couple. One is we still don't know how that wide receiver room is going to work out. So when they need a passing play, who's going to step up and make that play? Like I said earlier, I think that's still very much in question, and they're still kind of figuring out their rotations at wide receiver.
Hmm.
Um, and I think also, you know, Young's ability to move around in the pocket concerns me a little bit. In years past, the Chargers have had a lot of trouble with mobile quarterbacks. So his ability to not only extend plays but create with his legs worries me a little bit. Um, and then it's just the defense kind of still coming together and the interior of the offensive line. I think those are the areas that give me the most pause at the moment.
Yeah. For me, it is stopping the run. Last year, we come off of a year where we were bad at stopping the run, and we just played the Saints, and we couldn't stop the run. So, and that was basically how they, you know, commanded the game. They commanded it with, Alvin Kamara, and Williams being able to run wherever they wanted to run. Physically, though, the presence there at the offensive line, where going into the season, the Saints' weakness was the right side of the offensive line, and they were basically running it whenever they wanted to. And when you have an offense that is doing that to your defense, it just presents all types of problems. You can't really hone in on one, um, specific scheme as far as, how can we get our defense, into the backfield? How do we get pressure on the quarterback? Well, you got to make sure you stop the run, because if you get gas trying to chase down the running back or chase down the quarterback on the edge, you're creating more running lanes, right? So it's a lot of things that we put on film, um, that scare me, from the sense of we're exposed a little bit, and yeah, it's week one. And that's one thing we do have to our advantage, because you haven't really seen everything that the Carolina Panthers might have to showcase, and hopefully, the biggest jumps, the biggest progression that you'll see out of any team is from week one to week two. And so hopefully there's a lot more progression as far as how they're getting better, eliminating errors, mistakes. I mean, the sacks that we had this past weekend, we have to figure out ways to see those things coming early on in the pre-snap. I think pre-snap reads, um, across the whole board on offense, can get better. And obviously, at this level, college and pro at this point, um, it's harder for the offense to really get jump started. You see across the whole league, I think half of the league's quarterbacks didn't pass for over 200 yards. And so when you have that kind of stat line year in and year out, you don't beat yourself over the head about how your quarterback performed, because as you know, offense, there's a lot of things that have to go right, to make things happen. So,
Yeah, I would say one other concern that I have for the Chargers on offense is actually how long it's taking Greg Roman to get plays in and get the team lined up. They had a lot of
mhm.
issues with getting the plays in and getting lined up. Plays were coming in with 10 or fewer seconds left on the clock, and they were having to rush. There wasn't time to check, and it was very disjointed for the majority of the game. It got better in the fourth quarter, but that's something that Greg Roman offenses have always struggled with, is that fluidity of getting plays in and playing with a little bit of a tempo. So hopefully they can pick the tempo up early in the game and get past that, because that was a huge issue with the offense last week, was they just didn't have time to get organized.
Yeah. How is it as a fan, with the Chargers switching up from San Diego to LA? Like, is it the same? Is it different? Is it better? Is it worse? Like, are
Um,
like, how is that?
I mean, I live in San Diego. I grew up in San Diego. I grew up a San Diego Chargers fan, so I had a hard time with the move. Won't
Mhm.
lie about it. I was angry for a while, pissed off, and refused to follow the team for a little bit. and then I wound up getting back into it. They brought in Herbert. He pulled me all the way back in, and now here I am back doing the podcast again. But yeah, I was angry. I was furious with Dean Spanos, and
Yeah.
it at the end of the day, I'm still rooting for the team. I'm not rooting for the owner, but it'll take more to get me up there to go to games, just
Hmm.
because of the distance and because of some of the bad feelings.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people feel the same way as you do. So, like, how's it been as far as the lack thereof performance over the past, I guess, 2 years ish or a year? I guess last year.
Past 10 years.
Well, I was basically kind of like counting in my head how you guys been. It hasn't been good for a long time. Uh, I specifically remember the Pittsburgh Steelers, like those games with the Chargers, what, 11 years ago,
Hmm.
12 years ago, maybe. Um, a lot of heartbreaks there, huh?
Yeah, lots of heartbreaks and lots of big games pretty
Yeah,
much my whole life. Um, yeah, I mean it's not easy as not just being a fan, but doing a podcast. We do a live show after every game.
yeah,
So when they inevitably, piss away another game in the last 2 minutes, we got to go on and talk about that. You go through that 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a season, and it's like, man, do we have to do this? Do we have to do the show?
yeah,
So we were pretty happy they brought in Jim Harbaugh because we think that culture and that mentality is going to change.
yeah. Well, it's already proven so far. But I will say it's the first game of the season, so um, a lot of people that won their games this week are feeling on top of the world. But I'll tell you, make sure you stay humbled because things can switch up on you real quick.
Well, we're Chargers fans. We've had lots of 1-0 starts and with no playoffs, so
Yeah,
we definitely know how that goes.
yeah,
So I know you gotta. I know it's late for you. You gotta go. I was just hoping maybe we could end the show with maybe you telling a little story from your playing days, maybe a locker room story or something with teammates, just something fun.
yeah. I'll tell you a story about my first time going to. I kind of shared this story before, but my first regular season game was actually against San Diego Chargers. 2008 rookie year, and I remember a couple carries. I don't remember them verbatim, but had a couple mid zone plays where I got some. I got maybe like a 12-yard gain here, 7-yard gain there. But I just remember D'Angelo Williams setting the tone and basically treating this game, being able to go against LaDainian Tomlinson on the other side. Mike Tolbert was in my draft class, and he was able to, be an understudy of that running back room. And just looking at that game, my the trip to San Diego was an experience because I'm allergic to shellfish, and I ended up having shellfish on the flight on accident.
Oh
And
no.
I actually we had our training staff create like an EpiPen they stuck me, put me to sleep like a tranquilizer, woke up, got off the plane, and we go to practice. I practiced. I had a really good practice. Um, and this was my first regular season game experience. And I had my family there, some friends that were able to travel down to California for it from up north. I'm a Northwest guy, so I'm from Washington, went to Oregon. Um, but yeah, I just remember we won that game, and it was Jake Delhomme throwing, to the back of the end zone to Dante Rosario for the game-winning score. And Dante Rosario was our tight end, and he played with me at Oregon. So it was really it was a cool experience for me because it was like I was at home. I was like, oh wow, like this guy that I know scored the game winning touchdown in the NFL. Wow. Can't get any better than that. First game. Right. And I remember like sprinting to the end zone and just like throwing him against the wall, and then everybody else came and like beat him up basically for scoring the game winning touchdown. But I just and then I remember, post game going up to LaDainian Tomlinson. I wish I would have asked him for his jersey, but just shaking his hand and just basically telling him, man, I really appreciate the way you play. He basically told me in certain words like, hey man, just keep your head right, keep working hard, and everything. The sky's the limit type of talk, and just a surreal moment. And the very fitting story since we're playing the San Diego Chargers or the LA Chargers now. Um, and so I just that was a cool experience. And when you're from a child, you're growing up thinking, oh, maybe one day I'll play in the NFL, and everybody has that dream. And once you get to the NFL and you realize that you're one of those guys that actually made it to the NFL amongst millions of people that have had that dream, it's a pretty surreal moment. So super blessed, been honored to play that game, and watching these young guys now, with all the opportunities now with technology and being able to showcase themselves in a way that people get to actually get to know them. Look at Amon, or what is his name? Amon Ross St. Brown. Is that how you say his name?
Yep.
His podcast and just being able just to get on there post game and be able to talk about the things he wants to talk about. Taking control of the narratives. I love just where that part of the game is for these players. Being able to establish themselves on their own platforms is a beautiful thing. So,
Well said. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time tonight.
yeah,
I think our fans are really going to enjoy the show.
no
So
doubt,
thank
man.
you.
Thanks for having me on. Go Panthers, keep pounding. Um, I'm sorry that the Chargers left San Diego, but I'm glad you're still on board.
Still on board, just as much as ever. I didn't
Yeah,
think I'd be saying that when they left, but here I am.
there. Look at God,
Um,
man.
well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate the support. Remember to like, follow, subscribe on YouTube, on Twitter, join the Discord, all that good stuff. Thank you, and keep an eye out for more content later in the week. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time.